Are you in a position where you're defined by your age, and that's limiting you to pursue a dream or goal you want to accomplish? The More Than Your Age podcast is about having conversations with women who fully live their lives without being dictated or defined by their age. This is a space to encourage women who feel blocked to pursue a dream or goal based on their life circumstances. Welcome to the More Than Your Age podcast. I am your host, Erica Pasbar. Let's start living life fully and become more than your age. This week's episode with Jessica DeVoss is part 2 of my interviews with 2 women who decided to pursue counseling later, quote unquote, later in life in the mid-30s after being a full-time caregiver. Jessica's conversation with me was just very encouraging, and she's in the midst of it right now. And so I wanted to get a chance to interview somebody who's been through it, still in the profession, and then the other person who's in the midst of this lifelong career change and life change. And so her perspective is really neat. There's one thing that she said that just stuck out to me, and I'm not going to say it now because I want you to wait and listen to it. She says it towards the end of the episode. Wise words from a wise woman. So I know you will be encouraged by this episode with Jessica DeVoss. Well, hi, Jessica DeVoss. Welcome to the More Than Your Age podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I am very excited to hear your story and hear where you are right now. And actually, before we get started, I haven't really done this, I don't think, with any of my other guests, but I do want you just to share your age right now and your current season in life.
Okay, so I'm about to turn 36. So in a week, I'll be 36. So I'm 35 right now. But I guess when everyone's listening to this, I'll be 36. And my current season of life is I have 4 kids, ages 2 through 10. And I am the primary caretaker of those kids, but I also moonlight as a full-time graduate student.
I like that. That's awesome. And we're obviously going to get more into that through the rest of the episode. But before we get to all of that, so you and I met, I think I was already out of college. I can't remember because I'm just a little bit older. But we met at the University of North Texas. You went there, right? I'm like, wait, maybe you went to TWU.
Yeah. No, I went to Denton. That's where I went. I went to UNT, and then we met in college life when you were either volunteering or were still around. But we were pals then, yeah.
Yeah, that's how we met. So why did you decide to move to Denton or UNT? What initially brought you there?
My mom. I wanted to go to college, and I had these grand plans for myself to go to New York and do like musical theater because I was 17, and the world is your oyster, I think, when you're that young. And my parents were like, that's a good plan. Why don't we go to some other places and see what else is out there for you? And so my mom took me to UNT, and I went into the rec center, and I thought it was a really cool place. And that's pretty much how I decided to go to UNT, was the rec center. I have thought about nothing less.
That's amazing. It is. I mean, I'm sure it's even better now. It was a great rec center.
It was great, and I used it a number of times, and much more as I got further along in my degree. But man, that was really cool stuff. And then we went to the square, the Denton Square, back in 2005. The square was like Cartwright's and recycled books and Jupiter House, and that was like and the mini mall, and that's all the square had to offer. It's
now
way
it's
different
thriving.
now.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't even know how to get around in Denton anymore, really. But yeah, so it was very superficial. I think the Lord, it just kind of, that was where I was going to go. And so there was no stopping it. And so I think he just was like, this is it for you.
Well, so you were interested in musical theater. Did you pursue any of that just like on the side when you moved to Denton?
No, none
Just
at all.
You did it.
No, I was in show choir in high school and I really loved choir. Like I loved it so much, and marching band, but I was in choir. And so I thought I wanted to do that on like Broadway in New York City. And my mom was she was so kind to be like, yeah, I think you could, but you could also do something else. And so when I went to UNT initially, I was an English major and I thought that I wanted to be an English teacher. I don't know. And then I was an elementary education major. And I took that pretty much all the way up into where I would be an elementary school teacher and go do student teaching. That was where I got into the program. And then I realized that I didn't like kids and I didn't like planning lessons. So there was no real thought to anything I was doing. But I really took and then so I was like, what's the quickest way to graduate? And it was child development and family studies. And so I went to my first class for that, and it was a marriage class. And I loved it. I turned in every assignment on time perfectly. I got like 100 in the class because I loved that class so much. And then through that class, I took another class about child development, which was less interesting, but still interesting. And I was so excited about this marriage class. And then at the same time, Tom Nelson was going through his Song of Solomon series at Denton Bible Church. I think he did it like every year at that point. So I was listening to that, and I think the Lord just kind of woke up something inside of me that really loved talking about marriage and learning about it. And that's kind of when I talked to Shanda Anderson, who was the college life girl kind of leader at the time. And she was an LPC, a licensed professional counselor. She talked to me a little bit about being a counselor. And then Kim Seville, she talked to me about counseling. And I was like, yeah, I actually think I really would like this. And so that kind of was the beginning of this wanting to be a counselor. Does that answer your question?
It does answer my question. And then, and so we'll get to the counseling in just a little bit because I know part of it. So when you were in Denton, at some point you met your husband. Where did that fall in the line? How did y'all meet?
Well, so I emceed College Life with Jimmy Schrader. All of these names have not come out of my mouth in forever.
I forgot about that.
I did a few times, and my husband came to College Life because it was met on campus, so he didn't have to move his car from the dorm. He could walk or ride his bike. And he saw me on the stage and thought I was cute. And we met when we went to Art 6 after every time he met me there. I don't remember meeting him, but that's where he says that we met for the first time. And then he joined my small group that I had with Stephen Harper because it had the most girls. And
that's hilarious.
And he thought he could get a girlfriend if he joined the group with the most girls.
Well, he did.
And he got more than a girlfriend. He got a wife. He got a whole wife. and we became friends, and then that friendship developed into a relationship that has been the very best thing that's ever happened to me.
Oh, I love it. That's so sweet.
Yeah. I love my husband. He's a very good husband. Being married to him is the easiest part of my whole life. And I remember when we were dating or beginning to date, Jeff Wiesner had said, because I was a leader and he was in my small group, and Jeff was like, can you not date yet? Because if y'all break up, that would be real awkward for like your whole group dynamic. And we said, okay. And we tried really hard to do that. And we were mostly successful. And then I remember we went to Minnesota for a mission trip over spring break. And we came back from that trip like, okay, we need to date. Like this, we're flirting with being disrespectful of their wishes. Like, so I went to Jeff, and I don't know what I mean, of course the Lord intervened, but he let us date, and then he officiated our wedding. And when he was meeting with us to try to get us kind of married, he said that I asked him why he let us kind of begin to date before the end of the semester. And he said that he just really felt we would get married and he didn't want to keep us from that. And
wow.
that was really sweet. And so, so we did. We got married 12 years ago, and we're still going strong. Still going strong.
Well, man, those spring break trips, that's been love formed for so many people.
It's countless the number of relationships that have begun and maybe even ended. I don't know. But we were one of those college life couples. Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's funny is I co-led a mission trip. Where did we go? Nashville, I think. Co-led a mission trip. And I remember in the conversations preparing for the trip, Kate Bradley and Ryan Bradley, Kate Merbler at the time, they were both on my trip. And there was another guy on the trip. And I distinctly remember saying, I hope Kate hears this. I distinctly remember saying, oh, I'm not going to put Kate with this other guy because she's going to fall in love with him and she's going to like him and they don't need a date. So I'm going to put her with Ryan because he was like so, quote unquote, so much younger than her. I was like, oh, they won't like each other. And then here they are married like probably 10, 12 years later too.
Well, and it's so funny because we were on that trip with Lauren Apel. Well, she's not Lauren Apel anymore. Well, she's with Lauren Lucas at the time, now Lauren Apel. And some of those they were younger than me, and Amy Fournier and all those girls, and they were like questioning Marty, like, what's going on with you and Jessica? And Marty is not a talker, and so he was like, what are you talking about? Like, I like her. It's fine. What else do you want to know? And they were just the whole time. We were doing kingdom work too. For the people that are listening to this, like Jeff, if you can hear this, like we were honest to goodness. we were following the rules, but people could tell that we liked each other.
Did you do college life when Shay Sumlin was leading as well? Or was it just with Jeff?
Yeah. No, it was Shay Sumlin into Jeff. I watched Shay's kids a few times. Yeah. So we were with him until he moved to California to pastor that church out there or do something out in California. I don't remember what it was exactly, but
yeah. So we were there. We were there in the same.
We overlapped.
Yeah, a lot. Okay. Well, awesome. So you guys, you met, you got married. What year did y'all get married?
We got married. Oh Lord. 2011, January 2011.
Okay. 2011. And then, so now you have this, like in the back of your mind too, you have this desire to pursue counseling, but you didn't at this point. So why did you stop pursuing that dream?
Well, I got pregnant with our baby, Charlotte. So we got married in January of 2011, and I was supposed to be done with college I took a very long time to finish my undergrad. So I started when I was 18. I didn't graduate until I was 25 years old because yes, I took a while to finish. I had a stint in there when I was a nanny, and I loved being a nanny. And so I loved being a nanny more than I loved going to school. And so I had some trouble with school and finishing school. And so I wanted to, but once I figured out I wanted to be a counselor, we were married, and I started the application process with UNT to go into their graduate program for LPC. And I found out in December of the same year that we were married. So January 2011, we were married. In December of 2011, I found out that we were going to have little baby Charlotte. And it was a shock. Well, I mean, I say it was a shock, but it wasn't a shock when I found out. It was a shock when I went to plug in something into the calendar and saw where that corresponded with my own business. That was the shocking part. The positive pregnancy test wasn't exactly a shock. And so that kind of began that. I think getting pregnant with Charlotte kind of began the necessary detour that I had to take. And so all of my graduate school plans were put basically not even on hold. They just weren't going to happen anymore. And our plan that we had worked out for him finishing his degree was severed at that time too. And so it was a real big period of adjustment and re-navigation, redrawing the lines of what we wanted to do. And graduate school just did not fit in at that time. At the time, it felt like a no, this isn't what you need to do. But now on the other side of it, it was just a not yet.
Okay, so you said that it was a necessary detour to have her and be a new mom. When you knew, at least at that point, like you said, you thought it was a no. When you thought that it was a no, how did that affect you emotionally and mentally?
Well, I was excited to have a baby. I mean, I loved Marty, and we were having her much earlier than we thought. So it was kind of a bittersweet. There was this bitter part, which was what life was going to be like for the next few years. It's not going to be like that anymore. And that was hard. I think it was harder for my husband than it was for me. But then I also, on the other hand, I was pregnant with a baby that we didn't have to try very hard to have. And there was so much to be excited and thankful for, that it's not that it made it less difficult. It just made it more confusing, maybe. I was very excited to have her. But I was also sad that we weren't going to be able to do all we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so you had her, and then how soon after did you have your second child?
Oh, soon. Very, very soon. I got pregnant with Lucy when Charlotte was 10 weeks old.
Oh, my.
Very soon. So when I say it was a necessary detour, I mean that. Like, we had our first three kids at a pretty decent clip. They came really fast. And there was so much that the Lord wanted to show me about himself and about myself and about life through my children, that graduate school just could not have fit into that. And honestly, I don't think that I would have done it the same. But anyway, yeah, so we had Lucy 11 months after we had Charlotte. So I had a baby that was a newborn, and then I had a big baby that couldn't walk that I was carrying around at the same time. And at this point, we had moved from Denton to Austin, where we kind of lived for a while.
Yeah, and that brings a whole other area too. Like, you're leaving your friend, your friends, your community, and then you're just starting fresh. And then you've got these two little ones. You just said too that there was like obvious work or obvious things that the Lord was showing you through having these children. Could you explain a little bit more of what that means, or what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, there's the normal things that you learn when you have kids, because, and you have children, you learn how selfish you are. You learn how how impatient you can be. You learn about your relationship with the Lord through your relationship with your children, how he how he sees you as his child. He gives you that kind of love, a very small amount, that you can handle, I guess, because his love for us is way bigger than our love for our children. But there were those things that I naturally learned. But then there were the very small things that I learned about myself, like I don't handle multiple inputs of sound very well. I didn't realize this, but if we have the TV on and someone's playing the piano and the phone's ringing, it's just too much for me. And I didn't know that about myself. And also just about his character, just the forgiving nature of God, how he has children develop in accordance with, like, the first 5 years, your kids don't really remember, or 4 years, they don't really remember. And so, but the body remembers, but the brain forgets. And so that's such a gracious thing that he does for us, to give us some time to iron out these kinks. And it's so interesting that the most critical years of development for a child is actually the most time that you'll spend with them, ideally. And so just the way that the Lord created children and created the family, and kind of how they work together to grow these children, I saw play out in front of me in real time. And it helped me to love God better. It helped me to have more patience for my children. But it also taught me really hard lessons about myself and where I falter and fail, and also where I do well as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful perspective as well, of just seeing, like you said, the formative years, like you said, ideally, would be the most time you get to spend with your kids, and it's just it's a huge part of their lives, just those first few years. Now, you told me previously that having 3 kids in 3 years was really hard. You kind of explained a little bit, but could you explain a little bit more about what was challenging with that?
Oh yeah, totally. So having the two under one for a month was its own set of hard. But we had then, and when I had Winnie, who's my third, I had a postpartum depression and anxiety, and so that was super difficult. And I knew that I had this going on. My husband had no idea how to navigate it or handle it. And my family was probably very scared about me having this, because they often would tell me I was very tired, or that I just needed some rest. And I needed that, but I needed a lot more than that. And so there was that layer. And then the other layer is just 2 toddlers and a newborn is hard. It is, I mean, we're just talking about the kind of diapers I was having to change diapers like they were triplets. So I was line them all up, and I was changing diapers. And then by the time I changed the third one, the first one needed a diaper change again. The house was a complete wreck because they were into everything all the time. It wasn't decorated because we had to put away all of our decorations because they would just manhandle them and break them. We had just, the dishes were always needing to be done. The laundry was always needing to be done. I was haggard and a dragon lady. My patience was razor thin. And it wore me out. It completely wore me out, having the 2 toddlers and the baby. The hard part wasn't even necessarily the mess that it made and the routine that was required. It was just the mental, physical. It's a whole body sport, mothering children at that age. It's a total body experience, and it's exhausting. And feeling depleted and not feeling like you have any internal resource to deal with that depletion was super difficult for me.
When you were experiencing postpartum, did and you have, like you said, you have these three little ones. What were some of the things that you pursued or that helped you to get or just to navigate that postpartum season? Because I know so many women experience that. And if you have anything that was helpful that you could share.
Sure. I think just awareness that it exists was really helpful. That I'm not crazy. I don't and what I'm going through is it's not normal, but it's common. And just the awareness of that was helpful. It helped me to kind of externalize what I was going through and not incorporate it into my identity. It just was like, this is something that I'm going through that's really hard. It's not it's happening to me, but it's not a part of me. So this love that I don't feel for my daughter is not an indicator of my love for her. It just is a part of my hormones being completely out of whack. And so just knowing that, and other mothers go through this, I'm not unique here. That was really helpful. The other thing that was really helpful was having something that I needed to get out of the house to do every week, which for me was Bible study. I joined a women's Bible study at our church, and I was faithful to go every week, in part because I needed the break from my kids, and in part because it was good for my soul. And so the Bible study really helped. I wish that I would have gone to counseling. I think I would have gone through that season of feeling the way I was feeling in a shorter amount of time had I felt some counseling support. I had the support of my husband. It was really hard on our marriage. He did not know what to do. He loved me and he wanted to help, but he had no mechanism to do so. And I had no capacity to tell him what was helpful because I honestly didn't know. And so Bible study was helpful every week. And just knowing that it was common was really, really helpful.
Yeah. I like how you said too, that what you're experiencing is common. It's not normal, it's common. And it also doesn't define you. It's a season of what you're going through. It's hormones and all this. And then the love or the feelings that you had towards your daughter didn't really indicate your true feelings. It was all this stuff that was going on.
Yeah. And I will say it was a solid year before I loved Winnie. And I was grateful to be able to nurse her for most of that year. And that really kept me reminding me that, because there was a point in where I was like, when is this child's parents going to come pick her up and take her home? I did not feel connected to her. And the only thing that really reminded me that I was her mother was the fact that I did nurse her. And that was really helpful. But it was a solid year before I felt like myself again. And her first birthday party, I just was sobbing because I felt like that postpartum anxiety and depression really stole her first year from me. And I'll never get that back. And I look at pictures of her when she's a little baby, and I don't remember that time very much. I remember it being really difficult. I remember some things, but I don't really remember a whole lot of her prior to age 1. And I think it's because I was just not in my right mind the whole time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think too, if someone is listening to this as well and they're in that season, they can, like you said, they can feel like someone gets it, or someone, they're not alone in this. And like you said, that there's women go through this. It's common, but to seek some type of help.
Yeah, I highly recommend going to see a counselor. When I got pregnant with my 4th baby, which when I remember when Winnie was really a little baby, and I just thinking how sad I was that this was my last baby and I wasn't going to have the kind of, because I wanted, going into my pregnancy with her, I knew she would be our last. And I wanted to savor the pregnancy experience and savor the baby experience because I knew it would be our last. And I felt robbed of that because I had this postpartum depression and anxiety. But even when she was at her first birthday party, I just felt this in my, I felt the Lord telling me, not like you're going to have another baby, but that like that everything works together for good for those who love him and are called according to his service. I just kind of felt that. And like, lo and behold, 5 years later, we had our fourth baby, and I got to kind of have a corrective experience with him, and not just him as a baby, but now him as a toddler, and getting to enjoy him as a toddler and as a baby, and now as a toddler, has really been good for me. Yeah, so it was really great.
That's awesome. That's good to hear.
Mhm.
So, in the midst of all this, when you had your fourth child, how old was your oldest?
5.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, you said
Sorry. My
yeah.
oldest, Winnie was 5 when I had Gus. Gosh, so 8.
Okay. All right. So through all this time, you're full-time provider,
Mm.
caretaker of your children. Did you ever struggle with identity or like, oh, I'm this mom, I'm here, I'm a mom. Like, were you yearning for the counseling? What would you experience outside of the postpartum? Did you ever struggle with any of that?
Mm. Yes. Oh, yes, all the time. I would be lying if I said I didn't. Yes, I struggled with my identity. I felt like a body and not a person. I felt, and I still feel like that. Like I still feel sometimes that I am not Jessica. I am cook. I am housekeeper. I am taxi driver. Like I don't. Yes, I struggled with my identity. I struggled with feeling like I was, and I don't want to diminish being a mom because it is what I was put on earth to do. It is my biggest and most important ministry of my life, is raising these children with my husband. But sometimes, some days it felt like there's got to be more to life than changing diapers and heating up tater tots in the oven. Like, there's got to be more than this. And I wouldn't necessarily long for counseling, but I would just long for that feeling of completion and purpose. And I'm not saying that that can't be found in being a mom, because for me, it definitely is found in a huge part in being a wife and a mother. But it felt like something wasn't clicking, something wasn't, like there's something more than this. This is good, and this is right. And I never doubted that this was what the Lord had for me. But there was like this yearning for something in addition to it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah.
yes.
As you were yearning for something in addition to being a mother, at what point did you decide, okay, I do need to research research, but just like go more in depth with this yearning? When did you decide, okay, I need to do something about this?
Well, my husband kind of did it for me initially, because but I did photography a little bit when I was in undergrad, and he kind of encouraged me to maybe explore that again. And so I did wedding photography and portrait photography for 6 years. When Winnie was a little baby, all the way up until the pandemic, I was a portrait photographer. And so that was kind of my beginning to step out and try to find out where this feeling was coming from. And so I did that for a long time. And then 2020 happened. And like a lot of people, I hear a lot of like pandemic stories, and excuse me, a lot of people have begun these huge things out of the pandemic. And so that kind of is where the counseling part came in, was in 2020, 2021. But before that, I was a photographer, and to earn money and to get out of the house. And that served its purpose for its time.
Okay, so then 2020 happens, and this counseling idea that was
Yeah.
you thought was a big no was put to rest, is brought back up. What happened to bring? I mean, I know you said 2020, but what exactly made you say, no, I'm going for this now?
Yeah. So when 2020 happened, In February, we went to New Orleans and we brought back Gus as a souvenir. So I said we were done having kids. And in February of 2020, literally like a month before the world shut down, Marty and I went to New Orleans with some friends. And we were just celebrating how we had no kids in diapers. And it was just the biggest crack up, I think, for the Lord to see us just basking in the glory of our freedom. And we came back and the world shut down. And I remember making an offhanded comment to Marty about how all the babies that are going to be born out of people staying home. And literally like 2 weeks later, I found out that I was pregnant and I had to eat so much crow. And it was hilarious. So we found out that we were pregnant with Gus. I was so excited. Marty I think he was shocked, and I think later excited, but shocked. And then we realized we had to move. And so we couldn't stay in our house. It was too small. We lived in Leander, which is a suburb of Austin, and that was getting very expensive. And so we kind of opened our hand to where the Lord would have us go. And he took us to Belton, which, if you know Belton, the University of Mary Hardin Baylor is in Belton. In fact, we live 5 minutes from the University of Mary Hardin Baylor. Okay. And so I had Gus in November of 2020.
November what?
November 17th.
Oh my gosh. My daughter's November 16th of 2020. When you said in February you came back with Gus of 2020, and I was like, I bet that our children are the same age.
They are very much the same age. Yeah. So I had him in, like you did, in a pandemic, with the mask on at the hospital, like nobody could come except my husband. COVID, he had to get a COVID test, like the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so we had him in 2020. And then honestly, I was sitting on the couch in 2021. This is very thematic of my whole life. The Lord brought it to my mind because we were just sitting watching TV on the couch in 2021, and we were watching this show about a therapist. I don't even know what the show is called. And all of a sudden, the Lord was like, it's like he turned a switch on. It was that immediate. And I was listening to Amber Black's podcast, and she was talking about how it was like already done, like getting her son was already done. And it felt like that whole thing. Like he turned the switch on in the room and all of the furniture was there. The whole plan was laid out and I just had to walk into the room. And so I was sitting on the couch and it was like, I wonder if I could do that. Like, I wonder if I could go back and be a counselor. No, I can't do that. I have 4 kids. We have no time. I have no money. Marty works full time. I can't do that. But what if I could? But I can't. But what if I could? And it was this nagging feeling. And so I took out my laptop and I literally Googled like K-CREP accredited counseling programs. And UMHB was number 1 in the Google search. And I was like, there's no way they're going to take me. I can't. It costs a lot of money. We have no time. I have 4 kids, like the same. And I was like, but I could go meet with someone. I could. I mean, there's no commitment there. I could do that. And so I and this was like in June. Yeah. And, literally like a year after we had moved to Belton. And I don't know, like the Lord designed all of this because Marty's job was able to go virtual, like where he would work from home. And so that took us to be able to move a little further away. His job decided to pay for his toll tag. So he was able to commute and not have to pay for the toll to get to work. And then after that, we moved to Belton. And it was just like the Lord just orders all of the details of our life in such a way that just requires faithfulness, but also gives us simultaneous trust of him. I don't know how he does it, but it's just wonderful to be able to look back and see. But I went to see a meeting with Dr. Leonard, and I walked in and I looked nice. I got all dressed up and I had never done, I was like, they're not going to take me, but I'm going to do this. So I walked in and I sat down. I had like a copy of my unofficial transcript that he could look at. I had not applied. I had not done anything. And I sat down, and two of my professors were in there, and I didn't know them at the time. And I remember feeling very out of place. And they left, and he was like, "Hi, how you doing?" And I said, "Hello, and nice to meet you." And then he just started talking about when I come to school there. And I was like, what do you mean? I haven't applied. And he goes, "Well, you will." And I said, "But I haven't done anything. Like, this is my first stop, is this meeting with you." And he was like, "Yeah, I know. You'll apply. And then when you come, you'll be here with us. And let me show you around the campus." And it was so weird because he didn't look at my transcript until I was like, "Do you want to see my grades?" Like, I wasn't a good student in my undergrad. And he was like, "Well, you'll be a better student this time around." I was like, "I haven't taken the GRE." And he was like, "Do you want to go to grad school? Like, why are I was like, I'm 33 and I have 4 kids and I don't know if I can do this." And he goes, "Well, you can do this. This is fine." I said, "But I'm not a student." And he goes, "We'll make you into one. It's okay." So like, I was giving him all of these reasons and I hadn't applied. And he was like, "Let me show you around." So he showed me around the campus. He was the nicest man. And then in the parking lot, I said, "So what's next?" He goes, "So you apply." And I said, "Oh, okay, so I'm not in." He goes, No, you're in, but you have to actually apply for me to give you the spot." And I was the last person that entered the program. I was the last person they admitted. Mm-hmm. I was literally the last student and then they closed admission after me.
That was 1,000% the Lord, especially.
It was all the Lord. It was all the Lord. And so I go home and I tell Marty, I'm like, "Okay, I've done this weird thing." And I honestly thought my husband, who is the cheapest man I've ever met, I mean, like, he doesn't like to spend money on milk like he does. And so I was like, "Okay, so I think I want to do, what if I did this? I can't do this." And he's like, "No, I think that sounds great. I absolutely think you should do it." And I was like, "But we can't make this work. We have 4 kids. You work. I'm the primary caretaker of all of these kids." And he was like, "We'll make it work." He's like, it's not like you want to go to graduate school to be an artist. This is something you've wanted to do for a long time. And I think it's good for you." And I was like, okay. So I applied. I was admitted. And then I still hadn't worked up the courage to tell my family. And I thought for sure that's where the support would end. Like, they would think, "This is ridiculous. You're spending all this money. This is bad. This is not a good idea." And every single person in my family was super excited for me. All of my friends were like, "That's the perfect job for you. I call you all the time to sort out problems, and now you can charge me for it." Like, there was so much love and support. And yes, it's the biggest yes I've ever gotten. Yeah.
I love that. The part that I really enjoy hearing is the fact that you were trying as best as you could for it to shut you down. Like, all the stops. And it was a clear yes of, no, this is what you're doing. You're going to be pursuing this degree. Yes, you have 4 children. You're now in this transition of this whole different life that you weren't even expecting. And so now you're in the midst of it. How has the transition from, like, I know you're still caring for your children, obviously, because you're a mom. You're always going to be a mom. So how has the transition been from, not school? It's been a long time since you've been in school to, okay, I'm doing this. How has that been?
The first semester was, I thought it would be a lot harder than it was. Again, just the biggest yes. I thought it would be really difficult, especially I was worried about the academic component of, I was 33 years old. It had been, 9 years since I had written a paper, and it was fine. I mean, and it was more than fine. My husband was and continues to be so supportive, so flexible. His job has been even more flexible. And so it was not easy in that I had to try very hard. I had to kind of clean out the dust bunnies from this part of my brain that I hadn't used in a while. But the academic component has been easier than I thought. The thing that has surprised me is the personal growth that has come from doing a program like this. I thought that I would make a really good counselor and that there wasn't a whole lot for me to do to me in order to be a good counselor. And I realized that that's not true, that I have to do a lot of work on myself to get myself ready to be a counselor. And so I have 1 year left before I graduate, and the amount of growth has been exponential. And it's still very hard. We're entering into the hardest part when I actually have a part-time job, basically, where I'm going to be out of the home a lot more than I'm in it. And that's been a challenge, but the Lord has been kind to keep Marty and I aligned and our marriage strong, and has been kind to give us what we need to parent our children well.
That's huge. You said earlier that you love the concept of marriage and the importance of having a healthy marriage, and that your marriage to your husband is the healthiest thing that you have. And so is that the route that you're taking for counseling? Or is there another route?
Yeah. Initially I went to grad. Yeah, actually it is. Initially, I went to graduate school because I wanted to do bereavement therapy for parents whose children have died, or who are in palliative care or hospice care. And that's what I wanted to do because I had done some bereavement photography that had really been good for my soul, and I really enjoyed that. And so I wanted to carry that over. And then in May of last year, my son had a couple of strokes that landed him in the hospital for a week and 2 weeks. And it was a very difficult time. And again, just the order of the Lord is so good because he got those strokes. Like, I turned in my last paper, and 2 days later, he had the strokes that put him in the hospital. And by the time we were out of the hospital, it was right in that window between the spring semester and the summer semester starting. I didn't have to miss any school. And it was just in that time. And we've had therapies and things like that. But in that time in that hospital, I heard things and I saw things that made me second guess if that was what I needed to be doing. And I realized that I may not want that genre to be a part of my life every single day. And so I took a couples class in the fall of last year. And again, it was a marriage class, and it was talking about marriage therapy. And again, I loved it. I loved every part of it. It was so fun. And I love talking about marriage. It's so exciting. And so then I think the Lord I came full circle. And I am going to get my LMFT, which is my licensed marriage and family therapy license. And I want to do marriage and couples counseling. Yeah. So I went in with something else, but
That's okay. And so you said you have about 1 more year left?
I have 1 more year left. I have this summer. I'm almost done with this semester. This is my first clinical semester where I've actually been doing counseling with, I say, real people with real problems, but I'm seeing people off the street that are coming into a clinic that UMHB has for students, and people come in and receive free counseling from students who are second and third year students, and we are observed and supervised by licensed professional counselors and licensed marriage and family therapists. They can see what we're doing and hear what we're doing and make sure that we're safe with the people that we're counseling.
Yeah, that's really important. And when you finish, is your hope to join a counseling practice or start your own or work with a church? What are you thinking as of right now? Of course that could change.
Yeah, with the caveat that it could change. I would like to eventually, I would like to get my sex therapy license and be a sex therapist for Christian couples. That's kind of like a niche passion project, maybe. But I'd like to do private practice and group practice work. So.
Okay, I'm excited to see and hear about how your practice evolves and just when you finish it up, because it is a big leap. It's a big jump to do something that you weren't expecting, and it's scary. And you've been used to being with your kids full time, and now you're jumping into this whole other realm. And so I'm proud of you for doing that. I think that that's really incredible and inspiring. And I know that we had like messaged back and forth that you had listened to some of the episodes of the podcast and just felt like the idea of being more than your age is really necessary and important. Why do you believe that?
I'm studying the book of Genesis right now, and I just finished studying the story of Abraham and Sarah. Well, Abraham and Sarah are a lot of Genesis, so I'm kind of in the middle. But the idea that God is not limited to our age, he uses us at all ages. And just reading the story of Sarah and Abraham, how God promised that they would have a child, and they were like in their 80s and 90s when that happened. And how God uses children, God uses elder people. We see in the story of Christ that he was a young guy in his ministry. And so if God isn't constrained by our age, then why should we be constrained by our age? And we are more than our age. That's just one biological component of who we are. We're so much more than, I'm so much more than a 36-year-old woman. My age is only a part of my definition. And I think sometimes we can get caught up, like I did, with the notion that I'm too old to do something, I'm too young to do something, or my age prevents me from doing it to the fullest. That was a big thing for me. Was I'm already 33. By the time I graduate, I'll be 37. Or I'm 34. By the time I graduate, I'll be 37. What kind of career can I have as a newly minted counselor at the age of 37? Well, I can have a really beautiful career as a counselor at the age of 37. And there's all this life experience that I bring to it that I wouldn't have had if I had gone into it when I was 23. And so we can get into that headspace where we think if we're, especially in our Western culture, when we put our kids in gymnastics when they're 2, and if we take them when they're 6, they're too old. And so, I mean, we're so much more than our biological age. There's like 2 ages. There's the age that you are and the age that you feel and the age that you act. And so it's like trying to navigate all of that. But yeah, that's why it's important.
Man, I really love your answer. I love that you said, if God isn't limited or constrained by our age, then why should we be? Like he can do mighty things as young as 2 through 102, So I think that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, I have one more question for you. And this is a question I typically like to ask most guests in some variation. And so my final question for you is, if you could encourage one woman who feels limited based on her current season in life, what advice would you give her?
You are doing hard work. It's important work. And God sees you. And you are doing hard work. It can feel like you're stuck. I know what it feels like to feel stuck. The hardest thing is sometimes moving our feet through our limitations, but having the faith to do that, you'll never be sorry. If you just keep moving forward, you'll never be sorry.
I love it. That's wonderful, Jessica. This was an absolute privilege to talk with you and to hear your story. And I know you're in the midst of it, but like you said, just you get to keep taking one step forward, and you're going to be a great counselor. And thank you so much, Jessica. I appreciate this.
Yeah.
If you were encouraged by today's episode, like and subscribe to this podcast and share this episode with a friend. You can find me on Instagram at Erica Shorey. That's Erica with a C, Shorey, S as in Sam, H as in happy, O, H as in happy again, R-A-E. Keep striving for your goals, live fully, and we'll catch you next time on the More Than Your Age podcast.